Have you ever wondered if the map of global power is, like, being redrawn right before your eyes? Because if our latest deep dive is any indication, the answer certainly appears to be, well, yes. Welcome to the Deep Dives, where we cut through the noise to get you well-informed, fast. Today we're plunging into a really fascinating topic, the rise of BRICS Plus and its seismic implications, especially when it comes to the pivotal role of gold. Our mission today is to unpack the most important nuggets of knowledge from a recent newsletter by the Macro Butler titled BRICS Gold Glory, the Dawn of a New Era. We're here to shortcut you to being well-informed on this monumental global shift, complete with surprising facts and unexpected connections. Get ready for a dramatic narrative about how a new alliance is challenging old economic orders and why gold is playing such a central part in this unfolding story. Okay, so understand this global shift. Let's unpack how BRICS went from, well, a simple banker shorthand to a full-blown council of ambition. Our sources highlight what they describe as the fading grandeur of the G7 and G20, established after World War II, right? Now seemingly mired in economic stagnation and demographic decay. In their place, BRICS Plus is emerging as a powerful new force on the geoeconomic map.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the speed of its evolution. It started way back in 2001. Jim O'Neill, an economist at Goldman Sachs, that's Goldman Sachs, obviously, highlighting their influence, he coined BRIC, just a market classification initially, for economies whose growth, quote, threatened to redraw the balance of global commerce.
So not just an academic term then?
Not at all. By 2006, the original four, Brazil, Russia, India, China, they were already meeting. Strengthening ties, aligning strategies. Their first official summit in Yekaterinburg in 2009 wasn't just diplomacy. It signaled a clear move towards, a multipolar world. Then, 2010, South Africa joins. BRIC becomes BRICS, extending its reach to Africa's resource-rich shores. The source calls this the bloc maturing into a powerful force with its own imperial ambitions.
And the growth just kept going, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sources talk about this rapid expansion into BRICS Plus by 2025. Now it's a formidable trading confederation, 11 full members.
Yeah.
Let's see, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Iran. That's huge.
It is. And they control vast reserves, commodities, strategic goods, markets, labor forces, the whole package. Plus, from January 1st, 2025, they added this new partner country category, adding Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Thailand, Uganda, Uzbekistan, and Nigeria, really deepening their integration.
Wow. So connecting this to the bigger picture, what does this mean in terms of raw economic and demographic power?
Well, the scale is just remarkable. IMF figures from April 2025. They show these nations commanding roughly 40% of global output in purchasing power terms, 40%. That already surpasses the G7's diminished share, which is around, 28%?
Yeah.
And it's projected to climb even higher, maybe 41% by year's end. The sources really emphasize this shift. Bullion, commodities, commerce, it's flowing away from the West towards this rising consortium.
It's a massive shift in economic gravity and population-wise.
The core BRICS countries alone, over 40% of the world's people. Add in the partner states in BRICS plus FA, and that share swells to an estimated 55.6%. It's described as this vast reservoir of labor, consumers, the sources call them soldiers of commerce, underpinning great mercantile empires.
Right. It really paints a picture.
It does. History often feels like a game of musical chairs, doesn't it? The global crown passes through many hands: Mesopotamia, Egypt, Persia, Greece, Rome, China, Caliphates, Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, Britain, then the U.S. Now, as new powers like BRICS plus jostle for their place, the sources point out a really fundamental difference in how established and rising nations approach change, especially between the U.S. and China.
Okay, how do those different approaches play out? The sources paint a stark contrast, you said.
Yeah, quite stark. The sources describe the U.S. almost like a Ming Dynasty reboot, kind of stuck in this 2% growth bubble, where, any 5-year stretch feels like watching paint dry, maybe punctuated by random disasters. For Americans, new tech has often meant layoffs, right? Think encyclopedia salesmen, flip phone giants. Change is seen as a wrecking ball.
Okay. And China.
Presented as the opposite. Technology, the sources argue, has been more like a golden escalator, lifting almost everyone up so fast that losing a job often means finding a better one pretty quickly. They see change not as a wrecking ball, but as a construction crane driving rapid progress.
That perspective difference is interesting, and it brings us to another fascinating point from the sources. Tariffs. They aren't just economic tools anymore. They're being used as geopolitical weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Like on August 7th, Donald Trump, the sources call him Donald Copperfield, which is quite something, reportedly waved his magic tariff wand again.
What happened then?
Well, a 10% global minimum tariff on imports, apparently. Canada's tariff jumped to 35%, Switzerland to 39%, 40 countries hit with 15%. China and Mexico got a 90-day stay of execution, but the message seems clear. Tariffs are the new geopolitical toy.
And this weaponization isn't just tariffs, is it? The rise of BRICS plus itself, arguably accelerated by the Biden administration kicking Russia off the SWIFT system. The sources describe this as sending a really clear message. The U.S. acting like the world's financial dictator. Comply or get cut off.
Right, and threatening China with the same thing if it helped Russia.
Exactly. According to the sources, that just accelerated BRICS' birth as a geopolitical counterstrike.
So it sounds like that whole plan to bankrupt Russia with sanctions, kind of backfired.
That's what the sources state, yeah. It backfired spectacularly. China started dumping U.S. debt. The Global South quickly realized U.S. financial hegemony wasn't just there, it was, as the source puts it, weaponized. The Genius Act is mentioned as just the latest chapter in this control the money, control the world playbook. I mean, remember, Europe and the U.S. booted Russian banks from SWIFT, except Gazprom Bank because Europe still needed Russian gas.
Right, that detail's important. So the attempt to isolate Russia kind of fueled this new bloc determined to break the dollar's hold.
Precisely. It created this whole new dynamic.
Okay, so this raises a big question. If holding U.S. dollar assets suddenly became a geopolitical headache, what did BRICS countries do? Did they pivot quickly?
They did. It's not really surprising, is it? BRICS countries started dumping their U.S. Treasury holdings faster than you can say unreliable trade partner. And the sources point out this ghosting Uncle Sam's trade party, as they call it, actually began way back in 2018. During the first Trump administration, the first act of Donald Copperfield, they were already worried about asset confiscation back then.
They saw it coming early then. So let's talk trade dynamics. BRICS Plus now moves, what, 21% of global trade? About $10 trillion a year?
That's the figure, yeah. A huge amount. And intra-BRICS trade itself has climbed. It was 22% in 2008. Now it's up to 28%. But the real star, according to the sources, is fuel trade. BRICS Plus's share there has doubled to 37%. That makes energy the prime playground for de-dollarization.
Okay, so we're actually seeing non-dollar currencies used more.
We're seeing anecdotal reports, yeah. Renminbi, UAE dirham, rupees being used for energy deals. India, for example, is now paying Russia in rubles and rupees.
So given all this, how significant is the challenge to the dollar's global dominance? Is the renminbi the main contender?
The renminbi is certainly the heavyweight in this shift, no doubt. Russia's foreign trade now prefers it over the dollar, partly because the Bank of Russia stocked up on yuan. It made up 22% of its FX reserves. Now, about that chatter, a unified BRICS currency to dethrone the dollar, our sources say basically don't hold your breath.
Why not?
Well, a few reasons. First, BRICS nations, according to the source, aren't really buying into the globalist playbook. Second, they've all seen the euro, which the source calls a sovereignty-sapping headache with potential debt defaults looming. They don't want that. And third, they're not exactly marching in sync economically. China is dealing with deflation post-COVID, while Brazil and India have stubborn inflation. So,
A unified currency seems unlikely then. Makes sense. So instead of that, what's China's strategy? How are they nudging the world away from the dollar? It sounds like they have a plan.
Oh, they do. It's described as quite savvy. China is quietly steering its own people and its government away from the U.S. dollar. Citizens are being nudged towards gold. Meanwhile, the state is building this parallel trade and finance system that just skips the dollar. It's like two tracks converging, a gold-backed domestic savings base, meaning a yuan-powered foreign trade engine, creating what they hope will be a new, stable financial middle ground.
That sounds familiar. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's almost like China's rebooting what the U.S. did post-WWII with Bretton Woods, isn't it?
Yeah, precisely. The sources explicitly call this Bretton Woods 3.0. The vision is BRICS on an RMB standard, with China itself on a gold convertible standard. But with key tweaks, right? No fixed gold price, a decentralized gold storage, learning from the pitfalls that sank Bretton Woods too.
So how would that work for other BRICS countries?
They'd get to choose. Peg their currencies to gold, the yuan, maybe something else. The yuan acts as the medium of exchange, but gold remains the ultimate store of value. The system is designed to nudge countries onto one of two paths, really. Path one, invest in your own economy with China as a partner. Infrastructure, goods, investment. Path two, stick to exporting raw materials and become, well, China's economic satellite.
Voluntary, but with strong incentives.
Exactly. The sources say, don't kid yourself, the pressure's real. They even call it a kind of Marshall Plan 2.0, with China doing the financing. And gold. Gold is the glue. It reassures other countries, keeps domestic folks loyal, steadies the ship as the dollar potentially fades.
This goes way beyond just currencies and trade, though. It's also a strategic battleground, isn't it? About securing trade routes. The sources talk about this clash between sea power and land power. Mahan versus Mackinder, almost.
Yeah, Mahan taught that mastery of the seas is mastery of the world. Control the trade flows. The Anglo-American world rode that for a century. But Mackinder saw the land, the world island of Eurasia, as the real pivot, where railways, rivers, roads bind the riches.
Like a global chess game. The U.S. tried to cage the dragon, maybe, with its island chains.
But the dragon, as the sources put it, burrowed. China, with the Belt and Road Initiative, is laying steel rails, pouring concrete, spinning fiber optics across continents, weaving this net of influence from the heartland out to distant shores, bypassing the sea lanes to some extent.
And Russia's response to sanctions fits right into this.
Perfectly. No dollars, no euros, no SWIFT. They double down on Mackinder's vision. Land power. They're turning to their vast network of rivers, the Volga, Don, Ob, Lena, linking them with ports, canals, railways, knitting together a Eurasian trade artery that bypasses Western-controlled seas. Moscow isn't just surviving sanctions, it's actively redrawing the map of Eurasian connectivity.
So it's a powerful China-Russia partnership driving it.
Seems like it. China brings the wealth and vision, Russia brings the land and resources. Together, they're weaving this web roads, rails, rivers that the seas can't easily touch.
Okay, so you have this Russia, China, India triumvirate emerging as what the sources call a mercantilist powerhouse. And China's export shift in the first half of 2025 really tells that story, right? The global south is the hottest dance floor now.
Absolutely. ASEAN, Africa, India, Latin America seeing surging imports from China. Meanwhile, the U.S. and Western Europe are reportedly showing the cold shoulder. China is clearly hedging its bets, cozying up to resource-rich, maybe less picky partners in the global south to dodge Western trade fights.
And India's oil imports are a prime example of this pivot.
A fascinating one, yes. The sources call it India's love affair with Russian oil. Imports skyrocketed from like 68,000 barrels per day pre-USD weaponization to over 2 million. Why? Because they're getting it 10-20 cheaper per barrel than Middle Eastern oil. Simple economics, partly.
And this challenges some Western narratives.
It does. For instance, the idea that India is just importing Russian crude to refine and export it elsewhere, the facts don't really support that. India's product exports are pretty much the same as in 2019. It's more of a destination shuffle than a huge surge. And the myth that only private companies are importing, also debunked. Both private and government-owned refiners are involved. Big names like Reliance, IOC, BPCL, loading up on Russian oil. It's a broad strategic shift.
Got it. And it's not just oil, right? You mentioned coffee, too, another example of BRICS mercantilism leveraging U.S. tariffs.
Yeah, the sources call it the terrified mess. Classic case. After the Trump administration hit Brazil with 50% tariffs on key goods, China didn't waste a second. Jumped right in, cozying up to Brazil's coffee industry. Granted export permits to 183 new Brazilian coffee companies. Brazil's President Lula apparently isn't shy about calling his BRICS buddies, and China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi called U.S. tariffs bullying and promised more cooperation with the global south. It's all connected.
Okay, so against this backdrop shifting trade, geopolitical power plays BRICS plus nations have been on a serious gold buying spree since 2022. They're now hoarding over 20% of the world's gold, with a 41% jump in grabs in just Q2 2025.
Those are the numbers reported, yeah. A huge jump. Russia and China are the heavyweights, holding nearly 3/4 of the BRICS stash. But even India added 19.2 tons last year. It shows, as the sources note, when the money gets messy, shiny metal feels like a safe bet. Plus, these BRICS plus nations also sit on some of the biggest gold deposits globally. They're top producers, too.
Right. So what is all this gold glory, as the source calls it? Tell us about the future of finance. And maybe more importantly for our listeners, how should you be thinking about your own assets in light of all this?
Well, the sources bring in history here with a pretty stark warning. War is the fastest way to bankrupt an empire. They cite examples like France through different eras, collapsing under war-fueled debt. And they describe these 3 acts of empire suicide. Act 1, reckless fiscal mismanagement, inflation. Act 2, when borrowing runs dry, tyranny arrives. Blame an external bogeyman this time, Putin is mentioned. Act 3, default and collapse.
And the sources claim the U.S. is where in this cycle?
They explicitly state the U.S. is currently in stage 2. That's a strong claim.
It is a very strong claim. Does the source offer much detail on why it places the U.S. there, or is it more of a broad historical analogy?
It's presented more as connecting historical patterns to current events, leading into an investment perspective. How do you navigate what they call a permanent crisis, where stability seems like a relic? The playbook suggested focuses on return of capital, not just return on capital. Preservation first.
Meaning?
Physical gold and silver are highlighted, called the only reliable hedges against reckless and untrustworthy governments and bankers, described as anti-fragile shields, non-confiscable, long-dated U.S. treasuries and bonds, deemed uninvestable returnless assets in this view. For cash, the advice leans towards short-dated USD investment-grade bonds and T-bills duration no longer than 12 months. And equities. Hunt for lean, low-debt, high-cash flow champions. Companies poised to benefit from reshoring, trade wars, rising defense budgets.
So a very defensive, tangible, asset-focused strategy.
That's the implication. The sources conclude with a very powerful, almost archaic statement. Gold is the currency of kings, silver the money of gentlemen, barter is the money of peasants, but debt is the money of slaves. Puts a fine point on it.
Okay, let's recap this deep dive then. We've explored the meteoric rise of BRICS plus West, this formidable coalition, challenging what the sources clearly see as fading Western economic dominance. We looked at the de-dollarization push, China's pretty clever gold-backed yuan strategy, and the critical role physical gold and silver are playing, or are argued to play, as essential hedges in this rapidly changing world. And look, this isn't just abstract geopolitics. It's about understanding the huge shifts that will affect global economies, trade, and yes, potentially your own financial security.
Absolutely. And as the American empire, in the source's rather relentless assessment, stumbles through its boom-bust-death cycle, history's verdict, they argue, remains unchanged. Tangible assets endure while paper promises can, well, burn. The future in this view won't be won by those who innovate fastest, but by those who hold what cannot be printed, censored, or erased. Gold has outlasted empires. The suggestion is it will outlast this one too. So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider, in a world of shifting power and deep economic uncertainty, where will you place your trust?